Welcome to the Changemaker Hub, striving to inspire change makers everywhere.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We have the most amazing Sharon Nyangweso here with us today. Welcome, Sharon. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, but you set the bar too high. You can't start with the most amazing. It might be downhill from here.
Girl, embrace it. Take it because you are.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Really excited to have this conversation with you.
Amazing. I'm super excited. This is actually my first time meeting you in person.
In person, yes. I feel like we surround each other everywhere, but have never been in the same room. So this is monumental.
Yeah, well said. It's like I've been orbiting around you. I follow you. Yes. I follow the Quake Lab. Just to say a little bit about Sharon. Sharon is a powerhouse in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. The corporate side of things, but also the community side of things. So I love to hear more about that. But first, let's get to know you a little bit. And I always like to start with, your most, memorable memories as a child, things that you loved. When you think about your childhood, what are those memorable times, loving times that come to mind?
Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have my therapist on speed dial for this one. This is deep. Okay, so I grew up sort of partially in Nairobi and partially here in Ottawa, and I don't want to. Now I'm gonna give the impression that I'm a big consumer, but there are two memories that I have that almost mirror each other in this really interesting way from these very different cities. Is around, I believe it was 1998. Nairobi opened its first really big box store. It was called Nakumatt. And I remember going there and just thinking, this is the biggest, fanciest thing I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, it was so big. We didn't have stores like that. Wow. And then probably about a year or two later, we then came to Ottawa. And I remember really well, we were staying, we stayed at the hotel on Rideau Street across from the Pizza for an embarrassingly long time. And I remember my siblings and I were we would keep stealing in the restaurant downstairs. They had those, in restaurants and diners, they have little jams and peanut butters. And we were so amazed by them. We kept stealing them. But when it was finally time for us to get into a proper home, we were taken to Walmart. I remember so well the Walmart. So you can remember, I already thought that I had seen the peak. I had seen what, forget the moon. I saw what man could do in creating a box store. Then you take me to Walmart in 1999, and I think I was shaking. Wow. First of all, I'd never seen so much cereal in my life. We went to the toy section, and I distinctly remember looking up. Wow. Because the all the stuff just went up. And so I don't know, maybe this is a pro or anti-communist memory here, but I just remember these two very similar sensations and sense of awe, but in two very different places and two very different times in my life. But now that's probably the thing that came to my mind.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, shopping, it's a lot of fun, especially for kids, because in your mind, you want it all,
right?
My
gosh, I didn't even know it all existed. I don't think I got to the wanting it. I don't even remember asking my mom for anything. I was just like, it exists.
I know. Yeah, it's not fun for parents, but it's a lot of fun.
No, I can imagine she was miserable, but I was having the time of my life. And she bought me, because we had to get blankets. We were really starting from scratch here. Yeah. And she got these bed in bags. And I still have my Barbie bed in a bag, and it's in terrible shape. But we move around as a family, and me as an individual moved around a lot, house to house, and I still have it to this day. One thing I still carried with me, just waiting for the moment when it fully disintegrates.
Yeah, keep holding on to it, right? It's not just the physical thing, but it's the memories that
Yes,
come with it.
absolutely.
And to be able to share, I had this thing when I was here
Yeah.
and when I was there, and it's still here with me.
It's still here, two
Yeah.
continents.
Yeah, no, I wish actually I kept a lot of my stuff. I'm from East Africa, from Somalia
Yes.
as well. I actually went to Kenya when I was, I think, 5 or 6 years old, and I still remember how beautiful Nairobi was. Like, that was in the 80s.
Wow.
And it was so beautiful. Like, I remember the greenery.
Yeah.
Like, it was so amazing.
Oh.
My uncle got married someone who was from Kenya, so we were there.
I
And,
love that.
and it was amazing. Yeah.
And I love that you're maybe the only person who's ever said the words, I remember Nairobi, it was so beautiful, it was so green. I think you might be the last and the first person.
Really? I have to go back and see what happened.
Yes, unfortunately. I mean, I think this is the many of us who are, who our roots are somewhere else in the world. We're seeing this really similar shift, especially in Africa, especially on the continent, where in the ambition for development, the ambition for being part of the Western world or whatever, we just went in a really strange direction where a country like Kenya and a city like Nairobi, I mean, I think we're one of the only cities in the world that has a national park within the city. It's made for some interesting scenarios where, like, there have been 1 or 2 times when a lion has been in traffic because they've left the national park, but we're losing those green spaces, that beauty in exchange for wide roads, highways, because those are the markers of development or I don't know that we've decided to take on. So I think anyone who is here, maybe in this country, but away from their personal roots or ancestral roots, there's always a mix where you're oscillating between a yearning and also like a sadness for what your home, the place you know and love is becoming or may become.
Yeah. No, I would love to go back and kind of just, even though it's been a long time ago, my memory, maybe I'm holding on to the stuff that I really love.
Keep holding on.
We went to a small town called, I can't even remember, but I think maybe that's where most of my memory is, with the greenery.
Yes.
But even with Nairobi, the place we were staying, I remember the backyard. It just felt like heaven to me. I didn't want to leave.
But it's incredible because you said you were around 5, right?
Around 5, yeah.
And it's amazing what, like, a child's memory, like, it says, hold on to this. This is beautiful. You have no reason or rhyme why that's the thing that, like, sticks with you. But I love that.
Honestly, we can talk about East Africa all day.
Yes.
But I'm curious about your entrepreneurship journey, because that's what we mostly highlight in this podcast. Although I want to go where our conversation takes us.
Absolutely.
So I want to hear more about Quake Lab, how that was found.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration behind it?
I'm sure you know, because you've spoken to so many entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurship often feels like you are always on the verge of crying, sometimes happy tears, sometimes just tears. But I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I had no interest in it. Both my parents are entrepreneurs in Kenya, and for as long as I can remember, it just looked really hard. It looked really like the winds can change very quickly. One day you're riding a high, next day you're not sure what's going to happen. There's so much feast and famine. And so when I was, starting to come into adulthood and think, okay, what am I doing with my life? I didn't even have a conversation with myself about entrepreneurship because I knew it was never going to be on the table. It was not something that I was interested in. It was not something that I wanted to even entertain. My dream in life was to be in a job, clock out at the end of the day, get my check every 2 weeks, not think about anything or anyone.
Plan my vacation.
Like have my days scheduled out down to the minute. But life-lifed.
That's a new one.
life-lifed very hard. And there's great. I was actually reading a lot of research from Stats Canada and other organizations just last night about Black entrepreneurship in Canada. And we don't have this rich body of data to lean on, apart from a few different pieces that we can bring together. But what we can see is that a lot of, especially Black women entrepreneurs, they continuously have this story of, you know, where I was, the workplace either didn't want me or was not structured in a way to retain me, right?
So we've been kind of forced into it.
Yeah, and there's this sort of common question among the people who do research in entrepreneurship in this country of, you know, is there a significant difference between Black and non-Black entrepreneurs, you know, racialized entrepreneurs and white entrepreneurs, where the former usually goes into it for survival rather than desire? And, you know, I have to ask myself that question, knowing full well that this is not something I wanted to do. I mean, I think there are two kinds of entrepreneurs in the world. There are the ones who are like, I don't care if I'm selling toasters or socks, I am going to do entrepreneurship. And then there are the kind who I think I fall into, where I was like, oh, I think I have a way to do a thing, and the best, you know, vehicle to do it is entrepreneurship, but we didn't really know what we were signing up for and are just, you know, chugging along. But in terms of me, so I found myself in a moment where I was really, really fortunate to work with a lot of really smart people who put a lot of rigor into their work, a lot of time and thought and care into everything they did. But it always felt that when it came to a systems analysis that brought into question how different people, specifically how marginalized people, navigate those systems, that rigor was always missing for me. And it's really interesting to be having this conversation now, because I hate saying things like entrepreneurship journey, but in my entrepreneurship journey, I'm in an interesting moment where I'm starting to question if what I do is in line with what I and others have called me. I think, like I said, the inception was this question of, you know, systems. We all have to navigate these systems, big and small, in work and play, at home. And a lot of the times we are not the architects of this system. And even more often, the architects of this system were not really thinking about some of us when they were building all of these. And by systems, I'm talking about, like, if we're talking about work, you're thinking about, you know, recruitment and retention, you're thinking about mobility, you're even thinking about insurance and vacation and all of that. And at home, these systems can include, you know, buying or renting a home, you know, just all these little systems that work together to build the world and the societies that we live in. And I was taking a lot of time and thinking about that and trying to incorporate it into my analysis, trying to see who's doing this, how do they do it. And at some point I thought, okay, I think there's a way for me to marry what I already know and what I do well, which was a lot of like design thinking frameworks, and bring in that level of analysis and see where it gets me. And I was doing it at the side of my desk, and it reached a point where I was like, okay, I feel like there's a level of efficacy to my method and to the approach that I have built, that I'm confident enough to take it out on the, you know, take it on the road and see what happens. But right now I'm in this moment where I'm really looking at the work that I've done and the work that I've done with the people who I've been fortunate to work with within Quake Lab. And I'm struggling with this idea of being a DEI practitioner. I will be very honest. And it's a strange time to be struggling with that, because I'm sure, you know, everyone and their aunties have seen those stories like DEI is dead. And I feel neither here nor there about it. But there's a lot that I'm trying to unravel. For instance, the way we think about traditional DEI practice is not something we've ever done. I've never done, you know, DEI training. I've never done unconscious bias training, anti-racism training. It has not been something that I feel called to, or that it feels aligned with the outcomes I'm trying to come to, or the processes that I really value. And also, I've never prioritized or been particularly interested in having people pay me to diversify their institutions, because I think of diversity as sort of a biological necessity. Diversity is built in to life. Any life form, there is incredible levels of diversity. This is not something we can choose, or it's not Santa Claus. You don't have to believe in it. It's there. It exists, right? And so the idea that I have to put in this work to say, okay, let me diversify your space, rather than asking, well, where there's smoke, there's fire. Why aren't certain people in here or staying here, right? That's always the level of analysis I've been most interested in. And so as time goes by and I'm looking at what we do, it's just not fitting well with that. And so trying to rethink as an entrepreneur, trying to be strategic, but also trying to be true to the work that we are doing and are looking forward to doing. Like, what are we? Big questions.
Oh my God, there's a lot to unpack.
Existentialism over here. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. And I can relate with my own story as well as the stories of the clients that I work with. It almost feels like we've been pushed towards entrepreneurship, right? It's not something that we dreamt about doing.
Yes.
But then it just happened that it was the most viable thing because of the circumstances that we were in. For me, for example, I was at management level, but then I was also doing a lot of side hustles. As a single mom, there's, you need to provide for the family, fill the gaps, and there's only one paycheck to rely on, right?
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot to compensate for that, but then I reached the point where, okay, I can try to advance in this organization and kind of become more in that upper management level, or I could just do my own thing, because I see a lot of women of color who are kind of struggling to be seen and heard, so help them package and position themselves so they can be free to do their own thing. So the idea of freedom was always in the back of my mind. I want to be financially free. I want to do my own thing. I don't want to ask anyone for vacation. I just want to decide.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But then what happens is, like you were saying, you make that transition, right? Because for me, I didn't see myself in upper management because my values are important to me, and I didn't want to let go of that, and I didn't feel like there was room holistically for me to be there as who I am, right? So as time went, I just felt like I need to make that transition. It became the only thing that makes sense. But then you're right, you go that route, and then you have to deal with the realities of entrepreneurship
and to be an entrepreneur.
The space that you're in, questioning yourself. Do I want to do this? Do I want to continue doing this? Do I want to do this in the same way that I have been doing, like you were saying now?
Yeah.
So looking back and looking forward in terms of your entrepreneurship journey, lessons learned, how would you forecast the future in terms of entrepreneur, and what does that mean to you? Like the whole entrepreneurship journey, like if you were able to do it in a way that makes sense to you and own it, what does entrepreneurship mean to you? I could just simplify it and ask you that.
Okay. So before I even answer that, I want to, maybe if you'll allow me to ask you a question.
Absolutely.
So, in talking about why anecdotally women of color, Black women, go into entrepreneurship and how you landed here, I'm curious to know, if you are to think back to the first entrepreneur, when you became like a sentient person who said, "Oh, this person is an entrepreneur," or when we were younger, I don't even think we had the word. It was business person. Who was that? What did that look like for you?
Honestly, I didn't have a person. I didn't have a role model of an entrepreneur. I didn't have a role model in general, and that's something that I'm a little bit like vulnerable about, because most people have their own role models, people they look up to.
Yeah.
But I think because of my journey in terms of like coming here as a young teenager to Canada, being a refugee, settlement, just my situation has been different from the people around me,
Yeah.
I kind of had to craft my own motivations. So I didn't really see anyone that looked like me that I could say, oh, I identify with them. I want to be like them. So actually in my vision board, I wanted to put a person, right, to motivate me, right? And I couldn't think of anyone. I put Oprah.
I mean, in the 90s, everyone had Oprah.
Exactly. So I didn't really have anyone. So I kind of had to dig deep and also make ownership of that journey, like make entrepreneurship personal to me. So it's not, I didn't see myself in the mainstream entrepreneurs. As a single mom, as a Black woman, as an African immigrant, I didn't see myself represented in the entrepreneurship world. So I kind of had to make it in a way that makes sense for me, that I could own it. I don't know if that answers
that
your
makes sense. And like
question.
define the parameters of that. Can I ask what that looked like? How did you define that?
Yeah, I mean, it's still going, right? So for me, this is becoming interview. You're interviewing me. But I love to share. I love for us to be organic in that way. But for me, the freedom was a big piece. Like the freedom to do what I want. And also freedom to impact who I want to impact. Right? So for me, like even the spaces that I was in as a team member, as an employee, I always, like, I have to make sense for me. Like, I don't want to, it doesn't make sense for me to just come for the paycheck.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just those weird people that I have to see bigger than the paycheck for me to actually get excited about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in every position, I always felt connected to that vision. And
The big why.
The big why. And when I get to a point where that's a little bit, not clear, and it doesn't make sense for me, that's why I have to transition to something else.
Yeah.
And with entrepreneurship, it allows me to kind of keep expanding and changing the course.
It's not like you have to leave.
Yes.
You just have
you
to
rebrand.
move,
You
be
shift.
flexible, shift. Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. I was thinking about that when you asked me your question, because even just by saying like business person versus entrepreneur, there has been a bit of a, like almost a rebrand in the entrepreneurship world the last, say like 20 years, where entrepreneurship means something different than, let's say, like what I grew up with, or maybe even what you grew up with. Because if you were to ask me similar, who was the first entrepreneur you saw, like you, I'd be hard pressed. Maybe I'd say like, okay, I guess my parents, because they were there. But even then, I don't think I would in that moment think of them as like, capital E entrepreneurs. Because I knew people who did business, and they didn't do business in the Steve Jobs or like Mark Zuckerberg way of like, I'm building something in my garage and gonna go out and sell it, change the world. It was basically what we're talking about, like a level of survival.
Yeah.
So, when I think about the first entrepreneurs, if I'm to try and detach myself from the heftiness of that word, I'm really thinking about like the ladies who like sold tomatoes and spinach and vegetables outside where I lived in Nairobi. I think about the ladies who, either used to come to my house or I used to go sit in their basement for 10 hours for them to braid my hair. And I think I've been finding a lot of interest and joy and power in reclaiming that image of entrepreneurship. It's not as sexy because it's not this big, hefty thing. There's no likelihood of someone buying your business, or, no one is valuing it in the market. They don't have a ton of staff. But even then, when I think about these people, it's not even that they were just entrepreneurs, but I actually think about them as social entrepreneurs, because there's so much great research that tells us things like, when it comes to, for instance, women, Black women specifically, we create what is called a virtuous cycle. In that when you when we have resources, more likely than not, those resources are going to be fed back into our communities and into our families. That is very, very unique to black women who are in business across the world, right? And yet, is that not the core understanding of like social entrepreneurship? This idea that there is impact, that there is value for not just the individual, but for the collective in doing this. You know, I think about every single entrepreneur, female entrepreneur I know, black female entrepreneur I know, and a part of any kind of profit or revenue they make, quietly or loudly, is fed back into community in some way or the other, right? And I think sometimes I have to resituate myself because, like you said, if you're not defining your own parameters, you're stepping into someone else's definition. I think for a long time I was stepping into another person's or other people's definitions of what does this look like. And the funny thing is, how I responded was I was fighting back against the parameters that were created. And I was trying to be so different. I was trying to do everything so differently in an effort to like go to the other extreme. And if there's one thing running a business will do is it'll humble you. It will humble you. And I really needed to step away and think about like, okay, what parts of my decisions are these aspects of the things that are unsolved, for lack of a better word, unhealed within me that are making these decisions, rather than me feeling like I'm making good decisions for a business. And I've gone all the way around, and I don't even think I fully answered your question.
No, you did. You did. And as I listen to you, I think about like the concept of entrepreneurship in our cultures, right?
Yes.
It's not something that we raise our kids to be. You know what I mean? That's why, like you're saying, like the concept is changing, and now it's sexy, and all the kids want to be entrepreneurs. But our parents didn't think that. Like there's risk. We didn't bring you all the way here to kind of gamble. Like you didn't go to school to do this. So now, like looking back in your journey, what are some of the lessons that you learned? Because you said, you know, it has been a journey, right? In the sense that, you know, sometimes you're trying your best to be not like what you see. Like, no, I'm different. And so you're putting your energy in being different, but then
you're like, who am I? Who am I?
Who am I?
That's a really important thing, because I think sometimes the trap we fall into, not even in entrepreneurship, but just as people, if you are spending all of your time defining yourself in opposition to something, you are building very negative
box
that you are placing yourself in, because you're not saying I am this, you're saying I am not this, right? And I think that shifts how then when you're finished building the box and you sit in it, you're like, ugh, this doesn't feel great.
Really this?
This is kind of depressing. It's just I mean I'm a soft life girl. I want I don't want a life of battle. But the lessons learned are, oh God, what you said is really, it's landing in me, this idea of like, what did my parents want for me? What did they intend for me? Because I think in the same way I was seeing them hustling day and night, and still are, I don't think they were like, man, I hope our kid is also doing this, you know? I think they wanted a little bit of a life of ease for me. One where there was no question about where the next paycheck was coming from. There was no question about like what happens if this fails. There was a level of security. And I am, at my core, I'm a history buff. I love history. And there's nothing you can give me that I won't say historical context is important, right? And when I think about my parents, both my parents actually, I think both my parents, my mom may be right on the edge. Both my parents were born in colonialism. They were born in colonial Kenya. And that means something very, very different than the world I was brought into and I was raised into. It meant that there was both so much opportunity when they came to young adulthood, because suddenly they were in, you know, an independent nation, and everything, like the world was an oyster. Everything was there for the picking. But also they were having to live under the shadow of decades of occupation and the fruits of that occupation, what had been left behind. Because what we know about colonialism in Africa, it wasn't this smooth exit, especially for settler countries like Kenya. You know, we continued living with the very same constitution for, I mean, I think we got a new constitution in 2010. Wow. So that's the same constitution we were living under, the same systems, the same structures. So even if there was so much choice, so much open, it was within the confines of what existed beforehand and who they existed for. And so this idea of, you know, dare I put words in your mouth, but like a liberatory way of picking essentially what your career will be in the search of freedom is really important, because I think my parents were doing that, especially when they were young, because they started out going to school and going into traditional career paths, and then veered at some point when it became, is there a better way to provide for ourselves and our family? So when you come down to me and all those decisions and possibly survival, this, that, and the other, I think the lessons that I have learned, this is an interesting week to ask me that, because this feels like this year, first quarter of the year feels like lesson filled. But if I can kind of try and move out from this specific moment and in general, one thing that I think has been coming back to me quite a lot as a good lesson is that failure is a very interesting concept. When I really think about it, it is not failure. I am, and I dare I say most people are afraid of. We're not actually afraid of failure. What we're often afraid of is public failure, right? Because realistically, we all fail every day. We probably fail once an hour. You fail when you thought, you know, you could put a little bit more milk in the cup and it spilled over. You failed when you accidentally left the fridge open. You failed when, you know, there's so many failures in your day-to-day life. But when you think about the failures that really hit, it's the ones that have an audience. And entrepreneurship brings you into this place where you are forever in fear of public failure, not just for the sake of the ego, but for the ramifications that come with that level of failure. And the thing that I'm learning so much is when I look at the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a lot of failure. But sometimes it happens so fast, you're not even like, oh, this was a failure. You're just like, yikes, pivot, you know, it's a lot of pivoting. And I don't know, maybe it's going to be depressing for other people, but the lesson that I've been really sitting with is, oh, I know how to fail. It's okay. I know how to fail. And there are also very few moments when your failure is very public. And like, there are very few things I can do as an entrepreneur that will like get me on international news. So how public could it possibly be? You know, I think about, I have failed multiple times. I failed so many times just today. So like, I know how to do this. I know how to do failure. I also know how to do success. I know how to do both of these things. And sometimes they feel inconsequential and sometimes they feel really big and hefty. The difference is, am I taking a little time to just be with it, right? Whereas the thing that I am worst at in my life is I try to move past the feelings part of feelings. I think of my downfall in life is I think of feelings more as like data. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I wonder what this is. What brought this on? What could have, okay, moving on, you know? And I think the same way probably with failure and success. Like I really am constantly thinking about it as information that is being given to me when I need to sometimes just be sort of sitting with it in both ways. When there's something that can be deemed failure, sitting with it and being like, oh, I was really excited about that and I feel bad about it and I'm disappointed in this or that or even myself. But even sitting with success and being like, wow, that felt good. Like, what does this feel like in my body? You know, can I feel the excitement? Can I feel the joy? Letting myself feel that. And so that has been a really big lesson, is that failure, I do it every day. I eat failure for breakfast. Like, I'm okay. It's not that bad. It's not that serious. Like, I had a friend in high school who would say, it's never that serious. It really never, truly never
the kids say that often. It's not that serious.
It's never that serious. So, like, just embody that. But other than that, I think the other big lesson that I've been learning that has been a tough lesson to learn, and it's funny because people said this to me previously, and even me saying this now, I know that it will not land with anyone until they're in it. They're going to be like, damn, that's what that meant. The people who are kind of going to be in the thick of things with you, they make or break where you go. And it is a tough lesson to learn because I think of myself as highly independent, and I think I can just will my way through everything and anything. And also, I do my best to try to think of people. I don't know if a lot of people don't think this way, but I like to think that all of us are doing our best, and that human beings are inherently good. We sometimes are in situations or in scenarios where our very best doesn't always show up, or we think it is what is required for our survival or our well-being. But I think at the core of it all, we are all inherently good. And I try and really lead in that way. But there's also that room of like, when people are not at their best, I don't want to always be out with my belly open waiting for that to hit. You know, I love the saying, don't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. That was a bit of a hard lesson I had to learn. And it's not even a altruistic, like, oh, I'm so kind and ever. It's not that. It's just purely that idea of like, it's okay to be protective of yourself. It's okay to be protective of the things that you build. And it's okay to make difficult decisions about people. You making a decision not to work with someone or to end a professional relationship with someone is not an indicator of your morality, or, you know, that you're a bad person or evil or anything of the sort. And maybe this is so unique to me. I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but it does feel that way, especially when you work in a space in which you are so deeply thoughtful and passionate and care about community and the ramifications of your actions. Sometimes that gets really muddled with this idea that we're just supposed to be kumbaya all the time, right? Yeah. And I think it becomes really important to tell yourself and tell others that the liberation that we're all seeking, it's kind of like I want you to be free. I want you to never have the shackles of inequity tied to you, but I don't have to like you. We don't have to be friends. We don't have to be best buds, but I want liberation for you, and I will work hard for liberation for you. Wow. Just went on my full-on monologue.
I love it. No, I love it. I love it. And I resonate with everything that you said. Yeah. Getting better at failure is a big piece.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really, how we frame failure in our mind, because failure is really just our way to mastery, right? And sometimes it's just we're not paying attention and it happens, right? So there's stories that we associate with those things that's damaging, not the actual thing, because without you getting something wrong, you can't get it right.
You'll never know it's wrong.
You'll never know, right? So I think that's key, especially for entrepreneurs trying something new. Yeah. Every day trying something new and wearing different hats. Yes. And so just getting past it and saying, I'm pro at this. I fail every day. Right? Let's go. Let's go.
I'm still failing, because both success and failure I think they're not necessarily linear, right? Like the bad calls I made 2 years ago, they're now maybe coming to roost now. And so it's not like failure is an event. It is this long, and success too. Success is not an event. It is this long, winding road that maybe you only realize halfway through. You're like, oh damn, I think I'm on failure road, or I think I'm on success road. Like you maybe don't even know.
Because it's all in one. It's it's the same thing. We're just getting good at something.
Yeah.
And we can't get good at something if we don't try.
Yeah.
Like I remember telling my kids, go and fail at something today. Just go and fail at something today, because you means you tried something you haven't done, right? You actually put yourself in a position where you don't know how this thing is going to work. And that's the only way growth will happen. Is if you try something new.
And you're terrible at it.
You're terrible at it. And then tomorrow you try again. And you get excited about the journey of trying this thing and perfecting it and getting it to the next level and keep adding.
Yeah.
So
I got to ask, what have you failed at this week?
Oh my God. So the thing is, like you, I've learned to, with the mindset piece, I've learned to kind of not look at it as a failure. It almost doesn't have that meaning for me anymore.
Yeah.
But I tell you something, if something keeps showing up as a problem, that's when I stop and say, okay, there's a lesson I haven't learned here.
Yeah.
Because if the same issue keeps showing up in my life, that's when I stop and say, okay,
there's a pattern here.
There's a pattern. Where can I grow? Where can I learn? And as soon as I get out of my way and I kind of shine, light on the blind spots, then I can see, okay, I can actually do something different. And if it keeps showing up, I keep going back to the
You're like, haven't learned.
Haven't learned. It's like you keep failing at that math test because you haven't learned the lessons.
Haven't learned the lessons.
So it's almost like, it's showing up because I didn't take the time to learn this piece, right? It's nothing against me. Not that I'm not smart enough or this or that. It just means I haven't paid attention to this thing. And it's going to keep coming up if you haven't paid attention to it.
Yep.
So it's a good thing that we fail because it shows us. In the moment, it doesn't feel like a good thing.
Oh gosh, it feels like garbage. Feels like garbage. But the great thing is there's this, I think I'm going to butcher this. Some scientist is going to be real mad at me. I think it's thermodynamics. I can't remember. But there's this idea, principle that nothing alive in the world is new. Like, you die, go into the soil, and that's whatever parts of you are in the soil, your, minerals, whatever, that then feeds the soil, and something is then going to grow from that soil, and so on and so forth. And
the cycle of life.
It's a cycle of life. And in the same way that, like, nothing awful or nothing wonderful that happens or nothing that you blunder in is probably new. So and I think, I always joke, there are very few things that are not reversible.
Yes.
Very, very few things on this planet that are not reversible.
100%. And I love that piece that you shared with regards to if you're feeling it, if it's happening to you, it's not new. It's happened before. It's happening to someone else. And so, that mindset and the mental health piece too, where we sexify entrepreneurship, where we talk about, okay, I'm free to do this, free to do that. But then the pressures that come with, like, it's you, if things don't work out, you got to sit with yourself and say, where did I go wrong? What can I do better? There's no blaming the boss and blaming the company. It's all you.
Like, I hate this place, I'm leaving. And you're like, oh, damn.
Exactly.
This is my place. This is my bedroom. I can't go.
Where am I going? So, I think part of the solution in kind of just shifting our collective mindset around how we view change and the ups and downs of entrepreneurship is normalizing it, right? It's talking about it. It's you saying, I failed. Like, I'm good at failing, but also knowing that, your business could reach a point where you want to reevaluate things. You want to look at different ways of doing what's calling you, what feels true to you. So, like, entrepreneurship is not always, I know what to do, I know how to get it done, I'm always on the
anyone says that
grind.
to you, they are lying out of their teeth.
Yes.
They have no idea what's happening. Right as they speak, their email is probably being hacked. Like, they're wearing two different socks. If anyone says they know what they're doing, run. No one knows. No one knows.
I feel like we've taken a negative turn we're not persuading people to be entrepreneurs at this point.
but you know what? Like, okay, so I don't know. Again, I'm always worried. Like, am I about to break someone's spirit right now? But the way I look at things, and this is just me, it's not for everyone, is I think my work, I am very proud of my work. And I'm proud that I get to do this work. I know that is a privilege in and of itself. But my work is not the entirety of who I am. I contain multitudes. This Quake Lab, I am so proud of this business, and I'm really rooting for it to be there for the long run. But at the end of the day, it's a job. It is just a job. And I try to give my business and me in our relationship, me and Quake Lab have a relationship, I try to give it sort of the same space that I give my personal, my romantic relationships. I always say to my husband, to my mother's absolute just dread, I always say, I never want you to be here if you don't want to be here.
100%.
All right. If you ever feel like not feeling it, tell me. Because you know what really sucks is that feeling festering, and then by the time we're going our separate ways, there's so much vitriol, right? And in the same way, I try and look at my business like constantly. And when I'm at the worst, when I am feeling the roughest about it, I ask myself, like, do you feel bad, like in this is a tough moment, but we excited to keep going, or are you like, I don't want to do this anymore? Like, I have to give myself that room, because at the end of the day, this is a job. It's just a job. And I think what I do is important and I value it, but it is just a job. That's
incredible perspective that sometimes entrepreneurs lose sight of, because this thing I created.
It's your entire identity.
We get our whole identity attached to that thing, and that's why it can be crippling when things don't go as we planned, or the business goes bankrupt or whatever. So what are some of the tools or techniques that you use to kind of manage that relationship with the company?
It's not perfect. Some days, and I am most aware of it when you meet new people and they're like, oh, tell me about yourself, and you're like, well, I run a business. I'm like, girl, do you do anything? Do you do anything else? Like, is this all you got? No. And I'm most aware of it in those moments, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is still a big part of who I am, and that's not good or bad. It just is, and it's my decision to say, okay, I think it's good to get a little bit of space on it, and especially when you are the face of the business, and your brain is the thing you are selling, essentially, right? It's hard to entangle yourself, but what I have tried to do is I've tried to take care of myself outside of taking care of me as an entrepreneur, in the sense that when I am doing things for myself, I don't think about it. I used to think about this a lot. Like, I'd say I'm, working out, or I'm eating well, or I'm going to this professional, that professional, so that I can show up at my job in my best possible shape. But now it's like, oh, I'm just doing it because it's good for you. Like, I'm outside
You're not
of that
machine that needs to be recharged to do more work.
To go and do more of the thing. It's just sort of like, how do I take care of myself? Because I deserve to be taken care of, but because I like this world for the most part, and I would like to be able to enjoy it to the best of my ability. I would like to be someone useful in the world.
You deserve to disconnect.
I deserve to disconnect.
And just be.
But really, practically, what that looks like, I'd say the biggest thing that has taken that space in my life is something I never would have expected. I have become a professional sword fighter. No, I'm joking, I'm not a sword. The thing that I started doing is I found myself in this moment of like really deep fatigue early last year. Really deep, like, the tiredness that it's like you can sleep as much as you want. It's like in your bones, that tired.
Especially in the winter time.
Oh my God. It was really just, I felt like I was carrying like a 100-pound like logs with me everywhere I go, when I woke up, when I went to sleep. And I think it was a lot of things. But one of the things I was able to really quickly identify is in my work, I spend a lot of time looking at like kind of rough information, right? We are as a team very data driven and very data informed. And so we're constantly looking at research material, both stats, numbers, stories that are really like just don't feel good, right? Outside of my work, when I was doing what I thought was engaging with my community, it was an often not stressful, but like, yeah, a little bit stressful, necessary, but a little bit stressful. It's the protests, it's the actions, it's, you know, thinking about fundraising for this terrible thing or that terrible thing. And again, necessary.
And those stories, sorry to interrupt, relate to you too, because you're a person of color, so you can't really completely detach.
Yeah, that was me last week. That was me last month. That was, you know, my auntie last year. It's very real. And I started feeling this sense of like, man, does being someone who cares about the world and cares about my community, does it mean just being so sad all the time? Is this the only way to do that? And so I was like, I want to find a way, a third way to do something in the world, but one that feels really low stakes and really joyful. And I think a lot of people find a lot of ways to do that. They go to, you know, really great community events. I mean, just across the street from here, you have A7G. They have these fantastic events. And so people find a lot of ways to do that. The way I decided to do that was I decided to become the editor of my neighborhood newspaper.
Oh my goodness, more work for you.
Well, I mean, yeah, because I don't have enough time. But it has been so fun.
That's amazing.
I mean, frustrating at times.
I love it.
Like, no one I work with, the person who is closest to age in helping put this paper together is like 25, 30 years older than me. Like, these are like really gung-ho older women mostly.
Wasn't there a show back in the
Probably
2000s?
I would watch that. I would watch that because it's bizarre. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever done. I joke to all my friends that I am now a member of the Fourth Estate. I'm keeping democracy alive single-handedly by this, you know, high journalism that I do. But it's just really fun. That's like nice. There's a part of the newspaper, every single issue, there's this woman, she must be, I want to say in her 80s, and she writes this 2-page spread called For the Birds. And it is about 2,000 words of the birds she has seen in the neighborhood. When I first took over the paper, I'm like, we're going to have to axe this. And now I will fight to the death to anyone who wants to get rid of this. It just is so just low stakes, wholesome.
I love that. And honestly, I resonate with it. And I want to do more of these things because sometimes we feel like there's so much work for us to do in the world. Like there's so much justice to fight. Yeah. There's so many people to help. You almost feel like not good enough. Like you it's not time to rest.
Yes.
Like I haven't earned my rest. Like I have to. There's so much I need to do. So getting lost in the mundane, like looking in the sky and creating images, that's a good thing. Yeah. We should be allowing ourselves to
dream.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest freedom that we can give ourselves. And not get attached to the thing so that the thing consumes us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the best things I started doing, and I say this to my team a lot, if they hear this, they're going to roll their eyes because I say this a lot. I say we have to think about the work we do as planting seeds that we may never enjoy the fruit and we may never enjoy the shade. And that's okay. But that also means that human beings, we're tactile. We find a lot of value and pleasure in, you know, saying, I'm going to make a meal, and then you see the meal and you can touch it and you can eat it. We're tactile. And so as much as we can understand the work we do as like, we may never really fully get the fruits of our labor. Other parts of our lives need to have that immediate tactile pleasure, right? So like you said, the key word there you said was fight. These injustices we're fighting, we might see small wins, some big gains, but we're not going to see the death of it all, right?
It's not going to be eradicated.
It's not going to happen in your lifetime. And so something as simple as putting together a community paper where 5 times in a year I can hold the fruits of my labor.
Yes.
I can say, I did this thing. It is so like life affirming to be like, I am a human being in this world who has created a thing that I will see and that I can enjoy and others can enjoy in this moment. Other things I do, there won't be that, but that's okay because I've have my little push. Yeah. The other stuff, the stuff that feels hard, the stuff that feels like I'll never really see, that's okay. Yeah. It's worth it.
Yeah, amazing. I think the more I hear, I hear the need for self-reflection. Right, to like know when you're getting too sucked in and pull yourself out and say, you know what, this is just a job. As much as I love it, as much as there's a lot of me in it, it's just a job. And that's a lesson for me that I'm still learning because I'm so entangled with everything that I'm doing, right? And it doesn't feel like work. Like it feels like me. It feels like, okay, I can jump from one task to another and like just do it, just keep going to the time and not realize even the time is passing. So I think those tools are important for us to center ourselves and have time at the end of the day to say, okay, you know, what do I like about my day? Where can I adjust? And
I like that.
Kind of just find ourselves.
Yeah. And what parts of this job do you like doing? Make time for them. Make time for them. I know so as in entrepreneurship, everyone knows this. The entrepreneurs on the internet have glorified the grind, like never sleep on. And it's not untrue. I can't say it's fully untrue. Like there is an aspect of this work that is consuming, sometimes not in a great way. But it doesn't mean you have to lean into it so hard. Find the things that you enjoy doing. Find the things that you know, get you excited and remind you of the why. And then the other stuff, be like, okay, it's necessary. I mean, if you don't find bookkeeping joyful, it doesn't mean you stop doing it because the government will come after you.
But you don't have to do it either. But like you can hire someone.
You can hire someone, or you can set aside a chunk of time, be like, this is the time I'm doing it. I'm going to be miserable for 3 hours, and then it's done.
At least I'll feel good afterwards.
And you'll feel good afterwards. And it's a, like I said, you're catching me at a moment of like existential crisis where we're trying to say.
I think we need to normalize these conversations because you don't always know. Like you're always rebranding in your business, right? You're always adding things, taking away things, shifting things. And that's also the beauty of being your own boss. Like you could say this piece hasn't been working for me and for my business, so I'm going to leave it out.
That's so validating, Mona. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good to hear that.
It feels empowering to say, okay, I'm going to shift things so that I can find better meaning. I can find better joy.
Like that's why I'm the boss. I get to. I decided
exactly. Might as well be the boss.
Might as well be the boss. If I'm going to be the boss, let's be the boss. Yeah. Yeah. And that's hard. Even just the idea of, like, I will say, I have been doing this for a long time, and to date, you'll probably hear me throughout this conversation. If we go back and see every time I've mentioned the people who work at Quake Lab, I'll say my team.
By the way, you guys look so beautiful. I've seen that photo shoot you've done on the magazine, all wearing red. I'm like, who are these creatures?
Thank you. The team has changed drastically since we took that, but it's a moment. Speaking of like high highs, that is a moment that I will be forever proud of. Like I said, team has changed quite a bit since we took that picture. But I mean, there is, if I died after that picture was taken, I'd be like, you know what? It was a good run. Because that was a moment where I got to take the people I work with to Florence, Italy. We went to Florence for a week, gallivanted, made pasta, ate more pasta, we made. Like, it was incredible.
You lived like a boss.
I mean, right? And it was just this feeling of like, let's celebrate the good stuff and the bad stuff. And I hope I can do that more often.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
it was a really good feeling. That was a high moment.
That was just the beginning.
From your words.
Just the beginning.
Yeah.
I think we can talk all day, and I feel like each piece that we tackled can become its own conversation. So I don't want to, like, I feel like I want to stay and kind of just keep unpacking. I feel like we're just getting into it. But I there's one piece that I want to make time for, the mindset piece, the boundless mindset. So that was the inspiration for me to start my own business. And Boundless was actually the name I gave the year 2019, which inspired me to quit my job. And the name, just realizing there's boundless opportunities. It's just our mindset that restricts what we see. Right? So looking into the mindset piece, how has your mindset supported you or not supported you in some ways?
Really important, and I wish someone had told me this. The stuff that you are carrying with you, the hurts, the big T and small T traumas, the hang-ups, all of that stuff, that will come into your business and how you run it in one way or another. It will. And I think in terms of mindset, that has been the aspects of it that have been really jarring and have been really necessary for me to address. At this stage, I think I should like make my therapist like an employee, because she's really taking one for the team over and over again. That mindset really needed. There are things that I've had to have hard conversations with myself, that I've had to think about really deeply, that I've had to figure out how they've shown up in my work. Things like, why do I choose the hard thing? Things like, why do I doubt myself? These are not strictly professional questions. The hard things that you're going to come up against are not going to be strictly professional. You can't just draw a line and be like, oh, this is work me and this is, non-work me. We are human beings, right? And so in terms of mindset, I had to first give myself room to say, I am coming into this thing as an imperfect person. I am coming into this thing with my own baggage. The really, really excellent parts of me, I think, will show up and they'll shine. And the parts that are still heavy and holding on to a lot will also show up. And I need to give them room. And that's one of the things I'm terrible at, giving them room. Because I like to be very, okay.
Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. And, I have learned this about myself, that I value the process of solving a problem more than spending time with what the problem is, how it has made me feel, all of those things, because those things feel really tough and uncomfortable and deeply emotive, things that I'm not good at, and I have taught myself not to be good at. And the problem is that shows up in your work, right? Because you don't know how to sit with yourself. You don't know how to just not move into solution building. And so those are I don't know if this is exactly what you mean by mindset, but needing to face yourself is a thing that has been reasonably difficult to do, but necessary, because like I said, you can't be two different people. But it has also been really, liberating. And it has required a lot of kindness, but also a lot of tough love for myself, right? And sometimes the tough love is, girl, why are you so hard on yourself? The tough love is the anti-tough love, right? And that's been good, because I think very few people will know what you're experiencing as an entrepreneur. The other mindset shift that has had to happen, because this is one that hindered me, that I've in the last few months had to really come to terms with, is shame. I genuinely think shame is a bit of a silent killer. Shame will really take you down and you won't even realize what's happening. But there's a lot of shame in a lot of things. And some of it, we carry it from God knows when, from when we were kids, from when we were teenagers. But sometimes shame shows up, and it shows up in a different outfit. And so you don't immediately know what you're dealing with is shame. Sometimes shame looks like pride. Sometimes shame looks like stubbornness. Sometimes shame looks like fear. But until you sit with it and be like, I feel ashamed about this. I feel embarrassed. And I feel like I don't know how to navigate feeling so shameful. And then being like, okay, well, it's there. It's out in the open. Figure it out. And so just being reasonable with myself. That when I'm feeling ashamed, I need to like sit with it and be like, okay, shame is not going to help you here. We can dig into what's happening, but shame as a catalyst is not going to be a positive one. So that's been really, I think that's been really useful. And then the last piece, which is, I'm going to lean more in the boundless part. We know from the numbers available that Black entrepreneurs have the least, not ability, because ability is not the challenge here, but rather statistically, we don't scale. We don't scale. We tend to remain small. And then there are a lot of reasons for that, a lot of really practical reasons for that. Last night, the reason I was looking at entrepreneurship data in Canada is because I was putting together kind of a map using a poly-crisis framework. I won't go into it, but I will, maybe at some point I will sort of online or whatever. And just that was kind of the things that I was reading. Like, we don't scale, we don't grow, even though we have the potential, we have the smarts, we have the capacity, we don't scale. And it is not a personal failure. It is a systemic issue, right? But that being said, the boundless aspect that I think has been incredible for me and has felt like such a victory and so freeing to lean into is being so audacious in what I would like to have. In November, I had a really, really solid opportunity to go down to the States and meet with a lot of entrepreneurs. And when I was in Philadelphia, I met with the Philadelphia, I'm going to butcher this, but it was the Philadelphia Black Chamber of Commerce. And they brought on a few people to talk to us from the chamber, two of whom were older women. I think they were both in their 70s. They both ran consultancies. And one of them had I think I might be wrong here, but I believe it was the oldest Black-owned consultancy in North America. She'd been running this thing for 30 years. And as I was listening to her talk, I was just so in awe of everything she was saying. And I was like, why is this so shocking to you? And I realized it had never occurred to me that I could be doing this for decades. It had never occurred to me that my success could be so expansive. And I guess it's because you're always like, gotta be small. This is, we're just happy for this little win. We're happy we survived the year. But allowing myself to be expansive, allowing myself to be audacious, and not even in the way of like overconsumption or growth at the expense of others. Because that expansiveness doesn't necessarily mean I want to make $10 million. It could mean, I want to do really excellent research nationally.
I want to keep growing.
I want to keep growing in some way. Doesn't, again, have to be in people or in dollars, but just, I keep doing this movement of like opening my chest stuff, but the expansiveness, that boundlessness is such a gift. It has been such a gift.
Oh, wow. If you're not growing, you're dying.
Oof.
So a lot of times we think that if we just stay the same, things will stay the same, but there's no staying the same. No. You're either on that growth journey or on that decline journey. So yes, I think a lot of the reasons why we don't scale is because we don't see a lot of us doing that. And as a community too, we're in the scarcity space. So that's something that we need to, like, yes, there are systems against us. And even with our cohorts, the first workshop that we do is the Mindset Mastery Workshop. And so they might come with a lot of, oh, the world's against me, I don't have this, I don't have that. Yes, we're not saying that doesn't exist, but what can you do? How can you empower yourself? Yes, what can you do? And then from there on, you see them talk about, oh, that's my limiting belief. Oh, that's my scarcity mindset.
Oh, I love that.
So whenever obstacles come up, they're looking for opportunities. It's almost like you can't stop me. Like you can't stop me. Whatever you put in front of me, I'll find a way around it.
Yeah, and it's factual, because look at so many of our communities. Like, it is incredible. Do you know everything that had to happen for us to sit here? Do you know how many of our ancestors had to survive despite all odds? So yeah, we are boundless. We are boundless because we're here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sharon. This was incredibly enriching conversation. I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
Yes,
And
I'll be back tomorrow.
I keep wanting more. And just kind of unpacking and going deep with you. You're extremely intellectual and smart. So I feel like every time you speak, there's so much I'm learning.
That means so much.
So
thank you.
I thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep growing. Keep expanding. And I'm here to watch it.
Oh,
thank you for being
here. I'm so excited to be sitting with you and knowing you and being in your glow, basking in your glow. Thank you so much.
Love you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in this week. And if you enjoyed the show, please let us know about it. We love connecting with you all. Goodbye for now.